everyone, I'm senior video producer Jeff McCobb, back with another CinemaBlend roundtable discussion because last week a young actor at the very top of his game was taken from us far too soon. I mean, that impacts us personally, both as film geeks that have been in personal contact with him, and just given his overall legacy culturally and in the industry. And so we just wanted to get together and kind of reflect on his legacy, really. Welcome Erik Eisenberg, Erik Swann, and Sean O'Connell. Say what's up, guys.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey everyone.
I want to start with our events editor, Erik Eisenberg, because this dude, correct me if I'm wrong, interviewed Chadwick Boseman directly, 5 or 6 times?
5 times just by myself, once on the set of Black Panther in a round table. So yeah, I've had a fair amount of time to talk and meet with the man, and yeah, I'm still finding it kind of incredibly hard to believe that it's actually true. And in fact, when the news actually broke and I saw it on Twitter, I didn't believe it. I didn't see Chadwick Boseman's post first. I saw headlines about it, and I thought it was a joke. I thought it was some kind of bad, terrible joke. Clearly it isn't. And I've been spending the days since just reflecting, obviously, not only on my own personal experiences talking with him and just how incredibly impressive he was as a person, but obviously also, as basically everyone has in the movie community, reflecting on his body of work, which, I mean, the guy was working for so long, but with 42, his performance as Jackie Robinson just absolutely exploded. In 2013, in the last 7 years, there have been few actors who have really existed on his caliber, and it's unbelievably sad to not only recognize that he's gone for what it means for his friends and family and those close to him, but also just, I mean, it's painful that we're missing out on so many years of so many great performances because of something as stupid and horrible as cancer. And yeah, it's really hard to just wrap your mind around entirely.
Well, given that out of everyone at CinemaBlend, you've had the most personal contact with him. I mean, you only get to know someone so much during those interviews, but I'm curious. I know this is a big question, but what was he like as a man,
Honestly, constantly impressive. Like, the guy just gave off such an incredibly, I mean, it seems trite to call it a regal aura just because obviously his role as Black Panther, and I mean, but people have been referring to him as king for a reason, and it's because he had that energy, he had that capacity to just fill a room with his power. One of my favorite junket moments ever was actually with Chadwick Boseman during my interview with him for Avengers Infinity War. He was paired with Mark Ruffalo and Danai Gurira, and obviously at that point I hadn't seen the movie. All of my questions were kind of like just reaching for any kind of details that I could possibly get for CinemaBlend readers about these two movies. And admittedly, before the interview, I kind of prepped a tricky strategy, which was that my first question was about essentially the rapid schedule that had come together with all of the movies in the Marvel sphere, and then asked them as a follow-up what it was like then to be on Avengers 4, and if the experience was totally different. And Mark Ruffalo was about to answer, and Chadwick Boseman reaches over and says, "That's a trick."
How distinct were the Avengers 3 and Avengers 4 shoots?
I mean, it's a continuation.
That's a trick question. It's a trick question.
I was jumping right into the pit, man. I was going down, and thank you for saving me.
No, he's been setting us up from the beginning.
And then proceeded to completely tear down my entire plan step by step. And I was just there grinning like an idiot because what can I do? This was amazing. Like I was trying to gain and manipulate, and He completely called me on it.
See, the first part was him establishing that there are 3 movies, and then we didn't really definitively say what we did.
Yeah.
And obviously there was no ill intent, but honestly, I was just so impressed by it, and it stands out as, like I said, one of my favorite junket memories.
Chadwick Boseman's got you figured out, dude. You can't pull one over on him. I mean, Eric touched on it briefly, but like the roles, I hadn't really reflected on it until now, but the roles that this guy chose, like James Brown, Jackie Robinson, obviously T'Challa, and then he was in the latest Spike Lee joint. I mean, like, he was just crushing it toward the end of his career there. Like, he really cemented his legacy in such an amazing way. Erik Swann, writer-editor, was telling me before this discussion that he has personal feelings about it, that he has a personal story about the things that came to mind when he heard about Chadwick's death.
Well, yeah, first of all, it's just, it's still devastating, it still hurts. No one saw this coming. I mean, I remember I found out I had to work the next day, and I was just about to log off with my laptop and everything, and I went to Twitter, and the very first thing that's in my feed that I see is the post from his account, and I just I see an image of him and I see a statement, and I just think, no, and my heart just sinks. And then I see all these tributes, and I couldn't believe it. And I remember we were talking about, last time we saw him, he looked different, but people weren't quite sure, well, we were like, maybe he's prepping for a role or something, but obviously it turned out to be something else. But I will say, if anything, it's just been great to see everyone come together to pay tribute to him, and he deserves it, and rightfully so. Eric's story is just great. I unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to actually speak with him or meet him, but being in the Washington, the DMV, Maryland, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, I have a lot of friends who are Howard University alums and family members who are also, and Chadwick Boseman was a proud Howard University alum. If you meet anyone from Howard, they will tell you they are from Howard. They are so proud of it, and rightfully so.
Right.
And just the friends that I have and the family that I have, they knew of him, obviously, and just the pride that they felt that this young man, along with so many other esteemed alumni, went off and just made something of themselves. Not just becoming famous, but just using their power to, affect change in a positive way and just influence, just to encourage people and so forth. So I thought that was really just great to see my friends have that pride. And I actually have one friend who's a Howard alum. She now, she's in California, working within the entertainment industry. But it's a matter of just being able to see if someone can see someone in a position of power, it means so much, especially as a person of color. It really just means a lot, and it goes a long way in terms of a role model. So I think his influence in that respect is just so powerful. So yeah, and it's just been really beautiful to see. And
to the viewers, his address to a graduating class of Howard University is online, and it's I was just rewatching that, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. Sean, do you have personal experiences with Chadwick Boseman? Do you have any stories for us?
Yeah, I have a story I want to share in particular, but the one thing I want to sort of signify is how much he embraced the role of T'Challa and everything that came with it. I don't think it's much of an exaggeration to say that he'll always be sort of paired with that role in a way that Christopher Reeve was with Superman, the way Hugh Jackman probably was with Wolverine. There's other superhero characters that have been recast and replaced, and we've seen different variations of them over the years, and I don't think you're ever going to see anything quite like the way that Chadwick Boseman just assumed the role of T'Challa and made it his own. I wasn't a huge Black Panther fan, coming into his introduction to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I'll never forget when Civil War was coming out and they had a press screening in Atlanta, which is about a 4-hour drive from where I am. And it was a Tuesday night, 7:00, and my rep said, "Hey, if you want to come, you can come." And I was so fired up for that movie because of its place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but specifically it was the MCU finally getting Spider-Man. And if you can see, I'm wearing a Spider-Man shirt. He's my favorite character of all time, and I couldn't wait to see how he was going to get treated in the MCU. And I watched Civil War play out, and when I came out of the screening, the rep came over and said, "What did you think?" And my first reaction was, Black Panther was amazing because he just, the way he was introduced, the way that Chadwick Boseman owned that part, he was one of the most memorable things in that entire film, and I couldn't wait to see how they were going to continue it.
living, I'm not done with you yet.
I can't believe that this week in particular was the week that I was able to go back to theaters, and I was supposed to go see Christopher Nolan's film Tenet. This is very odd. I was supposed to go see Nolan's film Tenet in a theater in South Carolina, where Chadwick Boseman is from. He's from Anderson, South Carolina. I was in Greenville, not far at all. And I got to the theater that morning, and there was a technical delay that was going to push the screening of Tenet back from essentially 10 a.m. screening to 6:30 p.m. that evening. And it didn't make sense for me to go home. I'd driven a long time to get there, and there was nothing they could do. So the manager essentially said, well, what do you want to see? I'll just feed you tickets to whatever you want to go to all day. And when he read me the list of everything that was playing in the theater that day, as soon as he said Black Panther, I said, oh, I'll go watch Black Panther again. I haven't seen it on the big screen probably since it came out. And so I was lucky enough to see it again on the big screen, like the week that this happened. And it's fortuitous. I'm thrilled that I was able to see, because it plays like gangbusters, the way that everybody would imagine. And he's just so phenomenal in the role. He was great in everything, but he'll always have blown me away in how he just owned that part.
It's almost ironic looking back at his catalog, like rewatching some of this stuff. It's so on point. I mean, as Black Panther, we literally see him come back from the dead twice. We see him in the afterlife. There's recurring themes of legacy. I was watching Get On Up again, and he looks into the camera and discusses choosing to live.
See, I can't never quit when it get hard. You quit. You're going backwards, you're dead. No, I take it, and I take it, and I flip it. I goes forward. I live.
It's just like...
Well, I'll actually throw into that and say, like, one thing that stuck out of me just reflecting on Get On Up is, like, the whole thing about him being born dead, and the idea that, like, there's that line, I think it's something like, if God was going to take me then and he didn't, he's not going to take me now. And this is as he's about to basically crash land a plane into Vietnam. And it just, part of what really struck me about that now is that, like, essentially Chadwick Boseman was living with his cancer diagnosis since 2016, and yet he continued to do all of this incredibly awesome and ambitious work. And and that just, like, that energy, that drive to live and to live fullest is, that just hit me so differently, just reflecting on that.
Erik Swann, what do you think it is about him as a man that allowed him to take on these roles that were so infinitely impactful and influential?
Well, the one thing I got from him, he was very cerebral. If you look at him, like, he never just took something, it was never about a paycheck for him. It was always, okay, how will this be perceived?
Yes.
What kind of positive change can come from this? What can I say? And, he did that, obviously, with 42.
Maybe tomorrow we'll all wear 42. That way they won't tell us apart.
He did that with Get On Up.
Now we're together, we ain't.
I'm not sure if you guys remember, one of the first historical figures he played was actually NFL Hall of Famer Floyd Little in The Express, the Ernie Davis story.
Mm-hmm.
It was a small role, but really nice. And it's just like, he was always and Marshall, of course, he was always thinking about, I don't just want to do something that's just going to play and people will watch it and they'll forget about it later. I want them to see something. I want them to take something away from this. I want them to think. I want them to consider basically the world around them.
My jury isn't just the 12 people in that jury box. It's the whole goddamn nation.
So he was a very intelligent man and always very purposeful in the roles that he took. And even though Black Panther is obviously a blockbuster film, much bigger than those films, still, like, he believed that he could make some kind of change with that. Within the CG, within the action, within the spectacle, he could mine something from that people could really take away. And it really, based on how Black Panther did and the way it's been received, I think he succeeded. So I think he's just such a smart man, and just, it really showed on and off screen.
And to that end, too, like, one of the things that breaks my heart about it when we talk about the stories that he wasn't able to tell, it's director pairings that we're never going to be able to see. There's, when you get a talent like that, you just think, oh, it's going to be so exciting when he gets to team up with fill in the blank, and how are they going to challenge him and what are we going to get out of that collaboration? And so, it's a what if game kind of thing, but not having Chadwick Boseman around to not potentially have him show up in a litany of roles is equally depressing.
Well, I was just kind of quickly piggyback on what Erik was saying also about just like the choice of his roles and the understanding of the importance of representation. One story that I was completely honestly floored by that I'd never read before until the past few days was the story of actually how he met Michael B. Jordan, which was this was in 2003 when he was just starting out. He had no credibility as an actor. He was just starting. He got a role on All My Children, and the reason he ended up losing the role because he didn't believe that the character he was playing was a proper representation of a black person. He thought that it was a character that delved into stereotypes and they didn't feel comfortable playing, and Michael B. Jordan ended up being the actor who took over that role for him, and that's how the two of them met. But I'm just in 2003, so this is 10 years before the release of 42. Wow. And before he became this massive star, he was already standing up for representation and making sure that what he was doing was important and meaningful. And even on something as All My Children, which I mean is a soap opera that they throw together every single day, and that's not to slight against it, but I mean that honestly that floored me. There are so many people in this industry that are absolutely terrified, with good reason, because it's not an easy industry. It is an industry where if you make one false move, suddenly you're gone. You make trouble, nobody will ever work with you ever again. And the fact that he, at that age and at that point of his career, was willing to do that, it stuns me, honestly.
You hear actors say that they want to choose roles that they think will have an impact, but when you see an untimely or it's such a young death like this, the importance of that level of integrity is really put in perspective. Mm-hmm. Like how important it was in his career that he chose his roles the way that he did. Obviously, we all loved him as an actor, but the reason the world is so devastated right now is because of who he was as a person. When you watch things like his cast interactions with the rest of the Black Panther cast, or when they accept awards and the whole cast would come on stage and he would give a speech, he had this energy of a fearless leader.
I would never want the nickname King because it seems like a really tough thing to live up to.
And it is your time to be king.
And yet they called him that, and they called him that with sentimentality, and he filled those shoes. Absolutely. It blows my mind too. We were almost making jokes at the Academy Awards ceremony the year after Black Panther, when Wakanda Forever was still a thing. And we were saying I just feel bad for Chadwick Boseman. Like, he's everywhere he goes, he's gonna have to do Wakanda Forever, and the fans are always gonna do that to him. Wakanda Forever! But he never shied away from what that role came with. He maintained the presence that is required of that part, kind of thing. And I give him a ton of credit for that, because it's something that I probably would have tired of as an individual. Because it's tough. It's you want to break it big in Hollywood, but sometimes when you break it that big, the legacy of what you're taking on can overshadow you, and it didn't with him, which is astounding.
And just to piggyback off of that, I mean, it just goes to the fact that he understood what that meant to people, just to have a character and to have something like the Wakanda Forever, sign, just a lot of, it's crazy to say this, but I mean, in this day and age, it's still very rare that we get a massive mainstream blockbuster film that has a predominantly black cast. So, I mean, it's so significant. And I mean, he understood that with that, obviously, there's the regular weight of just being a superhero movie and being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But then you have the added layer of, what does this mean to the black community? And I mean, to carry both of those weights on his shoulders is just nothing short of amazing. So, I mean, it's astounding when you really think about it.
It changed the industry forever. I mean, to that point, I remember Kumail at the Oscars was using films like Black Panther as an example, and he was saying, we're not asking for more diversity as a favor. These movies are crushing it at the box office, Black Panther was domestically the highest grossing standalone MCU film of all time, which is a gigantic accomplishment, and it is the second highest grossing next to Endgame MCU film of all time, which is absolutely insane, the influence and the impact that it had. So I want to get some closing thoughts. We can stick with Swann while we're at it. How do you think, I know this is a big question, but how do you think his untimely death and his legacy is going to impact this industry moving forward?
Well, this industry, I think, first of all, it's hard, like you said, it's a big question, it's hard to say, but I mean, first of all, he's forever cemented in the fabric of cinematic history. I think that goes without saying. I mean, it's one of the greatest. It's so tragic because, obviously we think of what he could have done, but in the short time that we had him, just that slate of movies, such a diverse slate. So we're going to look at it that way. But I think also people will hopefully take a longer look at, like, in terms of actors, I hope they look, maybe I can look to this guy and I'll be a little smarter about how I choose my roles. And then also just in terms of the industry itself, like just to see, this is what representation means. That's what it all goes back to, representation. Like the Black community took to this guy because they saw someone that they could relate to. Honestly, when I heard he passed, it was almost like a family member passed away. So there's that deep connection there. So I would hope the industry takes from it that one thing, we just lost a star, someone who was just so impactful, someone who just took his role seriously, but also just that this is the kind of connection that your stars can have. Don't just go out and just find any person. Be thoughtful about the people you're casting, and bring them in and just give opportunities, if that makes any kind of sense, But I would just hope, and if I could just go a little further and say his legacy is just going to be so far reaching. I mean, in terms of the industry and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm not sure if you've all seen, but Simu Liu, who is going to play Shang-Chi, he's already said, I stand on his shoulders, Shang-Chi does not happen without him, and you can probably say the same thing about Miss Marvel, which is coming down the pike. So, he will be missed, but his influence will still, go far beyond him.
Sean, do you have any closing thoughts about how the industry is moving forward without Chadwick Boseman?
Well, I personally, I want to celebrate actors who are somewhat unrecognized while they're still here. And it's weird to call Chadwick Boseman unrecognized, but he's not somebody who was in the public eye all that often. He just was a dependable actor every time he showed up in a film. And there's a lot of other people who bring attention to them in between projects. He didn't seem to be that way, seemed very private. And so some of these times when these losses hit, they're for people who we often don't give a lot of focus to, but then we understand like we're missing a huge talent. Like someone like Philip Seymour Hoffman jumps to mind, where it's a shock, and you think, oh man, I'm never going to get to see that person practice their craft again. And so I hope that the industry, not that actors ever need more attention or celebration, but I hope that we recognize some of the talents that are out there and give them more opportunities to perform while they're still with us.
Yeah, and to your previous point about director pairings we'll never get to see, I mean, Coogler is just an amazing dude, and he was becoming his guy, you know what I mean? Yeah. And we'll never get to see that partnership again, and that is just absolutely devastating. Yeah. Erik, you have closing thoughts?
I do, and it's to kind of the point about the necessity to support talent. And because, I mean, again, I read a lot about Chadwick Boseman this week, and another thing that stuck out to me was that Phylicia Rashad was a mentor of his at Howard, and she actually she worked and with Denzel Washington wound up getting him a scholarship that wound up getting him to go to an Oxford a program in Oxford where he got to kind of develop his craft further. And those, I mean, obviously, there's almost, it seems like a level of destiny. Like there was just this man was just destined for greatness, and it's reflected in his body of work. But it truly is. It's just, it shouldn't have to take levels of Phylicia Rashad and Denzel Washington to prop someone with as much talent as Chadwick Boseman up. There's so many people out there who deserve the opportunities, who need that kind of opportunity. And if we see a lot more of that, we'll see a lot more of people of talent like Chadwick Boseman in places that we've never seen before. And that just, I mean, I think that is ultimately the most important thing that we need to take away from everything that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, just in this conversation, something I hadn't considered to this extent until now is just the concept of choosing your roles with integrity, and he is really proof at how far that takes you and what kind of legacy that creates. Well, I mean, we could really talk about Chadwick Boseman all day, but we have to end this thing eventually. So what do you guys think? Send your love to Chadwick in the comments. Let us know what your favorite role is. Keep the conversation going. Erik Eisenberg, Erik Swann, Sean O'Connell, thanks for being here, guys.
Of course.
We let the fear of our discovery stop us from doing what is right. No more. I cannot stay here with you.